the real Aloha Friday. Are you ready for tomorrow? It's Breakfast with Bob. Aloha Friday.
Pacho Man! Aloha Friday. This is Breakfast with Bob, Kona edition. We are brought to you by EAS Sports Nutrition, by Hoka One One, by Polar. I got my Polar on right now. By Oscar Wellness, Velo Fix, Four Seasons Hawaii, where we'll be hosting the World Championships. And we are airing on triathlonworld.com. One of our favorite guys. He's been on over and over and over again with us, Mr. Jim Vance. Coach Jim Vance, author of Triathlon 2.0. These are just the latest books. The guy comes out with one every week. Run with Power. Jimmy, how you doing, man?
I'm doing wonderful. Back in Hawaii again.
Well, and this is for a stat guy, this place is like a fertile environment because you've got all these amazing athletes, right? There's really no other place in the world where you're going to see 150 of the greatest pros in the world and be able to sort of assess what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, the collection of even within that field of different abilities is just awesome. And the ways we're looking at the race now in terms of power data actually being shared from the pros live, on the bike now. This year, I think there's a possibility. I know they were trying to work out if they can even do that on the run now. Power data live on the run and seeing how that's going.
So data basically from something that didn't even exist a while. Because you think about power, we think about it in cycling because your feet are locked in and you know what type of power you're generating. With running, it's a totally different concept because the idea is not to really generate power, but to run more efficiently.
Yeah, so when I wrote Run with Power, I kind of approached it with a cyclist mentality. Well, watts, more, and it turned out that really wasn't it. It's all about how fast you run for the watts that you're producing. Okay. So there's, on a bicycle, your power meter, anybody that uses a power meter, they realize the power number that's displayed is what's actually being transferred to the bike.
Right.
You're doing other work. You're moving, you're doing different things, but only what's actually being put into the bike is what's displayed on the power meter.
Okay.
Kind of effective watts, effectively moving the bike that's being applied to it. So you always want that number to be bigger. Well, in running, we do ineffective or inefficient things but they're still required. Like, for example, you take one step, okay? In running, you have to lift yourself off the ground.
Yes.
If you don't lift yourself off the ground, you're not running. So you lift up, but there comes a point where that's not really effective anymore. Like you don't want to just keep going up and up because the idea is to go forward faster.
Right.
So you have that's what we call vertical power versus horizontal power. So there is there's this point of diminishing returns on these watts. So it's really about looking at, okay, how many watts am I producing, but what am I getting for those watts and in terms of speed? And there is no simple, okay, what's the best ratio to have? It's entirely, there's so much more biomechanics involved in the movement of running than compared to cycling. So, and the technology and data is so new, we don't even know. Well, we're still kind of learning.
You always know it's new when you're basically coming up with the terminology, right?
Yes.
You were basically creating, okay, we're going to call this IOM, whatever the heck. I mean, you guys are creating terminology. When you were assigned the book, Run with Power, I think your first deadline was like October, and at that point it was like, guys, there's brand new companies coming out. There's so much more that I need. I can't write the book yet. There's not enough info.
Exactly. Oh, that's exactly what happened. I think it was December 1, and I didn't even get my first power meter until a couple weeks before here. Like, oh yeah, let me learn everything in 2 months and write a book. Like, not happening. So, and then I had to, not just me, but then I had to get it to athletes and try to train with them and learn and take assumptions and then test those.
Right.
Was I really right? Because when you write a book on something so new, if you get it wrong, everybody will let you know.
They will let you, especially the people your audience knows. They're looking for every comma, right?
Yes.
They're looking for every issue. For you, as somebody who you coach kids forever, right? And you're a swim coach, and you work with age groupers and pros. With the kids especially, how did you use this data or this information?
Well, I'm still kind of testing that. Again, because it's so new, it's hard to make any real assumptions. Oh, well, we should be this or that. I think I'm still using a technology with my kids, and I'm taking data with test sets and certain things, and I'm learning even in junior racing. This year we produced 2 world junior champions in Cozumel. So you've got, they came through our system, and that tells you how good of a junior system we have. So even that race is changing in the dynamics. So you can never make an assumption, oh, this is all it is, and then it's going to be that way forever. Our sport is changing across the board in every style and every way. How long ago was it we didn't have a sub 3 hour female runner here?
No, yeah.
And now we got Rennie outrunning all the boys practically, outrunning the men's podium. So the sport is changing dramatically. So even what we think is a norm is probably going to continue to be broken.
One of the things I always love chatting with you about is we assume that our professionals are obviously incredibly intuitive, and they know themselves. They know exactly what mile or pace they're running. But every year you measure mile 1, right? And then you get other splits throughout the day and figure out what their pace per mile is. And invariably, people are running a lot faster for that first mile than you would assume that someone who is a student of the game and knows themselves would be running, correct?
Oh, yeah. So it's right out here behind us, the mile 1 marker. And literally, I've been doing this for so many years, I started realizing there's so much more I can do to enhance the data and learn.
Right.
So I even take cadence data, what's their stride rate, and then I get that at 1 mile, and then I turn around on the other side of the road is 15K.
Yes.
So I get it at 15K, and I'm starting to look at how much drop off is there, and at what point is the race usually decided?
Okay.
Positions, because here's what's happening. They're all treating this like it's a short course race when they come off the bike, and that basically they're all in an agreement that, okay, we're all going to suffer and we're all going to blow up. Who's going to blow up
the least?
Yeah. That's really their plan. So to give you an example, last year Jan Frodeno's first mile off the bike here was 5 minutes and 43 seconds.
And what does that transfer to for the marathon?
2:29:53, I believe.
Right, and he ended up running
250. Yeah. He ended up running, good question, 252.
Yeah, 252.
So 23 minutes he lost on that. So here's the thing. That's 50 seconds per mile. His first mile was 50 seconds faster than the overall pace he ran for the whole thing.
Right.
Now, people be, okay, well, there's an art to this. There's an art of racing. It's a feel. You got to feel the race out. Well, he's been able to do this, and he's not the only one.
Oh, no.
It happens on the women's side. A number of years ago, Rennie made the same mistake when she was trying to chase down Chrissy, and if she would have just ran a little smarter, I think she would have beat Chrissy.
Right, it was 2 minutes difference at the end.
Yeah. Chrissy I think Chrissy went out in like 550 something, 557, and Rennie went out in like 551. So it was like, oh, you had her. Chrissy made the mistake, and you could have jumped on it. So it's not just Jan, but if we take this let's look at it from just a running perspective.
Sure.
You're a marathoner. If I'm your coach, am I ever going to tell you, you're going to go to this marathon, we're going to run the first mile almost a minute faster than the actual pace you plan to run for the whole marathon?
Never.
Ever. Now, if you're doing a marathon, you're starting it in the morning, generally in a pretty cool climate.
Yes. Very early in the morning.
Very early in the morning.
7 in the morning, not high noon.
Not high noon on a volcano with the sun beating down on you after you've just hammered an incredible bike ride.
Right.
And so these guys and girls, I think they got to keep a level head.
Yes.
And they just got to work into it. Let some of these guys go. Be confident in themselves.
Trust themselves.
Because the number one stat to win this race or do well in this race in general is total time to T2. You get to there. You get to T2 in position. You're fine. You're fine.
Yep.
You're there. Now it's just execute.
Right.
There's an execution part of this. And this is the thing. Go back in the day, Macca looked at the race and said, here's where everybody's missing out. We gotta push this part of the bike. We got to tack here. We got to isolate guys. He started to look at where are the weak points in the race. This is the biggest weak point in the race, and the best athletes in the world are making some elementary mistakes. And if they can tweak that, no one's holding them accountable to those mistakes and jumping on that. So
except you, my man.
Oh, yeah.
They were doing it right here.
Anybody that matters in the race, that is.
Well, take a look at. I look at a Brent McMahon, who's sub-8 in a number of Ironman races, and someone like Brent who in my mind is a 245 off the bike type of guy here.
Yeah.
And he ran 306, I think, last year. And the difference between even if he runs 256, and I think he ended up 9th, but that 256, I think, would have put him in potentially in top 5.
Yeah, he ran 6:07 off the bike for his first mile, I believe, last year.
Yeah.
And he ends up running, like you said, 3:06, which is 7:06 pace. So literally, he's running a minute faster now
for the first mile.
And people are like, "Well, a minute, that's not bad." It's like, no, it's 7:06 for 26 miles. So he was running actually much slower than that,
right?
Because that time had to come back.
Exactly.
So, and even by 15K, he was, I believe, he was in a little bit of trouble. He was at 6:40, so he'd already lost 33 seconds there per mile by 15K. So he's a guy that if he can execute, he could be very dangerous for those guys.
So how much of it do you think is almost a strategy where I know when Macca beat Crowe in 2007, the first time out for Crowe, Macca knew he didn't want to run side by side with Crowe. And his first mile, I'm sure, was really, really fast. He felt if he got a little gap that Crowe, since his first time, would be steady and would stay behind him. And he ended up, I think at the end of the race, Crowe was like, man, I should have made a move earlier, right? He felt he went too easy. And Macca knew he needed that gap early on. So how much of it do you think is a little bit of gamesmanship going, I'm going to hammer this first mile and the other guys will give up?
Oh, I think that's a lot. Long course racing, I tell all my athletes, is an emotional roller coaster. And you got to be careful never to get too high and never to get too low on yourself.
Right.
And that's the thing. And so many athletes in a moment will decide their race. Oh, the race is over. They beat me. You just got that gap. It's over. And that's what they're hoping.
That's what they're looking for.
That's what they're looking to do. And this is part of the short course movement that's come up. Because in short course, you never really come back.
No.
I think the only time I've probably ever seen someone really come back was Whitfield in Beijing.
Yes, when he had been dropped.
Yes.
He dropped, and then fortunately for him, the group slowed down.
Yes. But you never see that really in short course racing. That can happen here. And here's the other thing. We look at it, too, on the bike. How much harder do they have to go 10 minutes faster on the bike?
Yes.
Pretty darn hard.
Right.
Any athlete in general. They walk 1 mile, they lost that 10 minutes. And if you're walking 1 mile, you're probably walking 2.
At least 2.
At least 2. So there's an execution part of this. And that's it. That's the gamesmanship. Can you filter through the noise, focus on your plan, execute, know what you're capable of? And some of that's conditions. Some of that's how did the bike go?
Right.
How much were they jumping around? How much were they not jumping around? What was the wind? How well have they, hydrated, nutritionally? I mean, everything adapted to the heat.
Yep.
And who's on that day?
The other aspect of this race that's so different, and like when you go to the ITU races, usually the fields are very deep, right? Those WTS races are very, very deep. Most of the Ironman races that these guys are going to, there's 2 or 3 folks who are going to win the race. They come here, it's such a different dynamic. It's not like these folks are used to racing 30 other great athletes, right, who can win the race. I think if you asked 30 guys or 30 women, can you finish top 10 here? All of them would say yes.
Yes.
I certainly can finish top 10. Well, that doesn't happen in any other race of the year. How much of it is that this isn't something they have a lot of practice at because they're racing a huge group of folks.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really do too many of these. Like
No.
you can do an ITU race, you can stick
Every
them back
week,
to back,
right?
back to
Every
back.
couple weeks, yeah.
So, when it comes to this, this type of racing, I used to always say when I was a pro, I was like, you can take all the favorites, cut them in half. Half of them are gone.
Right.
Half
Something's
of
going to
them-
happen. They're
something's gonna
sick, they crash,
Their
they
training
blow
wasn't-
up. Yeah.
Exactly. So half of them are out. You got this group. And then you always got to realize there's a couple that are waiting in the wings in the dark that you're not expecting that are going to jump up
Yes.
and surprise you.
Yeah.
And in this race, we're seeing that more so with guys we haven't heard from for a while. Like Raylert was kind of off the map. And now here he is, boom, oh, don't forget about me.
Yeah.
Tim O'Donnell last year, boom.
Yep.
So there's these guys that are waiting in the wings. So when I worked with Jesse Thomas a few years ago, he was racing 70.3 Oceanside, and his power file was absolutely maddening on the bike. And he was
All over the
moving. He was matching every move, spike, and Potts out kicks him at Oceanside.
Right.
Literally, I think it won by 1 or 2 seconds.
Yep.
And now I didn't have Potts' power file, but I can pretty much guess how it went. He comes out of the water first. He doesn't have anybody around. He gets right into his power and steady.
Stays there.
And
There's
goes.
nobody around him, yeah.
No surges, no big jumps. He's all good. So, what we had to teach Jesse was, Jesse, identify the moves that matter. Don't go with every move. Know who to mark. Trust in that. Let the others do all that. Save it for the run. And because there's no way, I don't think Potts would have outkicked him. In that sense.
You would have assumed, yeah.
Yeah. So he's he followed that advice. Went to Wildflower. I think he only had 3 major surges at Wildflower compared to like 45 at Oceanside.
Yeah,
and what's he do? He runs away from everybody. It's
when you look at the people who run it right. Who I know Bart Arnotts was one you looked at in the past, who his overall marathon time was very close to what his first mile. I think that was a few years ago.
Within like a couple seconds.
And he ended up 4th or 8th.
He was in that top group. Yeah.
Top group. Who else has been good at doing that?
Not anybody else.
Really, most of them,
He was the outlier.
He was the outlier.
He was. And here's the thing: it's impossible to really think, in my mind, given how hard these guys have gone and what their expectations are.
Yes.
That someone's going to do that. There's an error range. You've got some credit, but how much of that? How much into debt are you going to go? Because it's got to be worth it.
Right.
And that's you look at Macca back in the day. He was good at doing that. He was able to read the race and know when to go.
Exactly.
But not everybody has. That's an art to racing.
Yes.
But I tend to think it's around for the pros. You got to keep it under 20 seconds to really not blow up and give yourself a chance.
So 20 seconds is the number. You really should be within 20 seconds of what you're going to pace for the marathon is going to be for that first mile.
Total pace. So. Right. So if it's 7, you can go about 6:40 that first one,
right?
And you're probably okay. But you start getting down in there. That's it. And these guys never look at the total time and really do the math. That's why in Triathlon 2.0, I actually wanted people to see. Here's the math. Look at the math. Understand. 3 hours is 7.
Yes.
It's not. It's not
5:30s. Yeah. Now, I mean, obviously, you didn't have power files back in the days of Mark and Dave when they ran 240 and 241. And last night when I was interviewing Dave, he was talking. I think they were running 5:40 pace through town for the first number of miles, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously, both of them they're like, we're going to stay with each other, and they're pushing each other, and whatever happened behind them, they really didn't care. Mm-hmm. But in that type of race, and we've seen that before. I think last year Jody Swallow was with Mary Beth Ellis. They're going back and forth, and they basically destroyed each other.
Yes.
And we see that a lot.
We do, and that goes back to that mentality, that gamesmanship. I'm not going to concede anything to you.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. And so that's it takes a confident athlete. Never get too high, never get too low. Confident in your plan, and it's hard. It's got to be very difficult to see the Olympic champion and the world champion running away from you, and you thinking you belong and you need to be with them, and you can just let them go.
Yeah.
And still be competitive in your mind and say, no, he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yes.
I think he's proven he's pretty good at what he does, but that doesn't mean they're perfect. So it's, back with Dave and Mark, they were the two. They marked each other the whole race.
Yep.
They knew who it was. And so, but if there was somebody right there that could have pounced on that, but, I mean, those guys ran incredible that day. But, you also look at it, the race has changed a lot.
Tons.
I mean, I think the bike ride is way harder than it used to be. And that's part of the reason why we're not really seeing guys run faster than what those guys did.
Right.
Even though we can probably assume the athletes that are coming in are probably
at least level or even better, but the reality is the overall times aren't any better, right? They're not going 8:09, 8:10 like those guys did back in the day. Daniela Reef, obviously, won here last year, won 70.3 twice, incredibly talented. I think she ran 3:06-ish last year, and her first mile was really fast as well.
Yeah, she went for her first mile 6:15. She had the fastest first mile of any woman in the race off the bike,
and ended up running.
And she was by herself.
Right.
She was. It was
so she certainly could run a lot faster for this marathon just by pacing better.
Yeah, and and there's a possibility that she went in a conservative mode, and maybe she realized, okay, maybe I'm doing this a little wrong, and backs off. By 15K, she was at 6:44.
Right.
So, but just go back to what we said about Brett McMahon. She's not far off Brett.
Right.
I mean, so to be right there, that's the quality of the athlete out front, and with Rennie out, she really didn't have much concern. In my opinion.
When I look at, you mentioned that with Rennie out, so this year Rennie's back. Rennie's run 250 here and is ready to run sub 250, and so someone like Danielle is thinking, I've got to get more than 10 minutes because I think she's been here twice and has run 306, 307, right in that ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
So how much pressure does someone like that feel when they start the run going, I've got to get to the point where I've got to build more lead because I've got the best runner in the world behind me?
Yeah, she's going to need at least 16 minutes.
16, you think?
At least,
okay.
Starting there. I mean, if you just go off last year, 250 versus 306, that's 16, and that's, there's also this thing I call mental momentum. Things start going right, you start catching athletes, you start feeling a little better.
Yes.
Your attitude changes, you're not so negative, you focus better on what you're doing. So, and I think, as Rennie, if Rennie's going to chase people down and things are going well, she'll push herself through. She could be sub 250. A lot of that too, I think, will be weather dependent.
Yeah.
I mean, this part of the course can be very fast too, and nice when the clouds roll in.
Yes.
And before they burn off. I mean, a couple of years ago, I want to say when Rennie did that, I remember thinking, man, this is the coolest I've ever seen it. And then last year, it was blazing hot. My computer, as we're trying to do this, overheats. It shuts down on
Your
me.
computer's overheating, and the guys are running by, and you're going, why are they doing that with the pace? But meanwhile, your computer's dying.
Yes. So
I love that.
Yeah.
The other aspect I think that's important is this race is unique because you're out in the lava fields. There is nobody around. And I wonder how much of that first mile speed comes down to the point you get off the bike. It's like, thank God I haven't been off the saddle for 5 hours. Now you're running and there's screaming crowds.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to affect you. And it's got to push you to run maybe a little bit out of your comfort zone.
Oh, yeah. And the first mile's not flat.
No, you were coming up, coming up Palani right at the beginning, yes.
And then you're on Kuakini, and then you come down, and then you're...
Yeah.
So it takes it out of you. So even these mile times, it's not like they're nice flat with the wind at their back.
No.
That's not happening. So it's certainly a challenging part of the race, because not only because of the competitors,
yes,
but to keep your cool and never get that too high part because of all the people around you. Personally, my favorite time in the race, Bob,
yes,
is standing there at the 1 mile and the 15K, and you swear you're seeing the Tour de France for running, because you got age groupers coming, some pro women at mile 1, and then you got the leaders coming by for the men on the other side, and it's just a tunnel of people on the road, and the motorcycles are trying to make space, and people are yelling and cheering and screaming, and you just see the athletes suffering, and you're like, oh man, you guys haven't even hit the Queen K yet.
Right. Wait till you get to the Queen K. Welcome to the real world. I remember Mark Allen, when he was winning this thing in '84, was planning his acceptance speech, and he's got 11 minutes on Dave Scott. Gets to the base of Palani, and God, this is great. I'm going to be home in a couple hours and win my first Ironman. Because I got to the top of Palani and I was dead. Nothing, right? The difference between the bottom of Palani and the top of Palani and hitting that lava fields when there's no people and nothing but no shade, right? Blazing sun. That's where everything changes.
It's awful. Palani is just a cruel joke on people.
I love that.
Everybody's dying to get to this race. I tell them, well, have fun, but it sucks.
I remember Scott Molina was the dominant guy at USTS series racing in the 80s, and he really didn't come here much because he had a problem with heat. I said, so Scott, why don't you come here and race Kona? He says, have you ever been there? It's a really crappy way to spend the day. And I'm like, you're correct. So Jimmy, the book's available, Amazon.com, anywhere.
CoachVance.com. Yeah, yes. VeloPress is the publisher for that one. Human Kinetics for Triathlon 2.0. So you can get those at those websites as well. So.
Congrats on everything you're doing.
Thanks,
I love
man.
What's happening, especially in the junior world. I think U.S. is kicking some serious butt out there.
Yeah, I'll be at the Olympic Training Center here in November working with some of our top junior males that we have identified. We fly them out and they'll work with Ben Canute and Eric Lagerstrom, and we even do that for the girls. 2 girls from my team are going to Colorado Springs to work with Gwen and Katie Zafaris for 4 days.
I love
All
that.
expenses paid. Go there, yeah, and just really we educate them on so much about racing and the next level, and it's all our future is very bright in the
Love
sport.
that.
For the
Love
US.
that. Jimmy, thank you, bud.
No problem.
Always a pleasure. We'll
Thanks
be
for
out
having
there at mile 1 and at the 15K, and so will Poncho Man.
It's Aloha Friday. Are you ready for tomorrow? It's Breakfast with Bob and Brother Jim.
Woo! Poncho Man.